Good morning. As you may or may not know, Windows Server 2003 is end of life this July. This is a Phoenix and HP webinar on the best migration practices and to give you guidance on the options available to you. So just a bit of housekeeping first. All attendees are on mute, so please submit your questions using the question panel on your screen, and we'll answer all the questions at the end of the webinar. And the presentation slides of this webinar and the recording will be emailed to all attendees within 48 hours. Phoenix provides a range of essential IT managed services from the UK that help companies operate their business today and grow for tomorrow. Our aim as a business is to become an essential element of our customers' success by providing trusted advice and flexible, scalable solutions to protect their operations today and support their plans for the future. This webinar we're doing today is in conjunction with HP, who Phoenix is a gold HP partner. So on to the actual webinar itself. I'll introduce myself. My name is Mark Scaife. I'm Head of Technical Development at Phoenix, and it's my job to work with vendors on strategy and future directions of both our customers and Phoenix as a business.
Good morning, Mark. My name's Rob Reynolds. I'm a consultant working for HP. And I spend a lot of my time talking to customers and running education sessions like this, talking about the best practices for migrating away from Windows Server 2003. So hopefully we can share some of that knowledge today. So I'll pick up, and just a bit of background so that everybody's aware of the situation and where we're at today. So on the 14th of July 2015, Microsoft is going to be ending support for Windows Server 2003. It's been in extended support for a period of time, but in July this year, that's when support will end from Microsoft. So what does that mean for your business, and why is that important? Well, from a first perspective, it's critical to understand what these security updates will actually mean. In December of 2014, there was a zero-day exploit for Windows 7, which meant that remote hackers could gain administrator control of your Windows 7 desktop. Now in January 2015, Microsoft released a security update and it fixed that problem, which is brilliant. If that same thing were to happen to Windows Server 2003 in August of this year, there will be no security update unless you have a CSA, a custom support agreement. What that means is that you're theoretically liable or open to remote hackers attacking your infrastructure, which is obviously a big concern for users. Be aware that as well, you won't get a custom support agreement by default. You need to be able to show Microsoft that you have a migration plan to migrate away from Windows Server 2003 to be eligible for the custom support agreement and to be able to get those security updates. These are issues for customers in terms of external compliance. So we've got many customers in the financial sector, and FCA regulations show that you need to be running an operating environment and a hosting platform that can receive security updates. If you don't receive the security updates, you're deemed to be not taking good care of your customers' data. Same situation applies for PCI compliance. For any customers in the public sector, if you're looking at any kind of code of compliance for your COCO connections, or even if you're looking to maintain compliance to CESG regulations, you need to be showing that you've got a platform that is able to receive security updates. Following on from that, you'll also no doubt experience a situation where newer hardware has drivers that are only supported on newer operating systems. So if you're running Windows Server 2003, then you're only going to be supported for older infrastructure. Finally, if you're running Windows Server 2003 and your line of business owners are looking to upgrade their applications, newer versions of the applications are only going to be supported on newer versions of operating systems. So there's a number of issues there in terms of internal and external security compliance, cost of support from the custom support agreement, and finally support in general for the hardware you'll be running your applications on and for the application software themselves. So moving forward then, we're just going to talk about how you can prepare your environment for a migration away from Windows Server 2003. So if you look at the issue in and around Windows Server 2003, a lot of the expectation when we first speak to customers is that the migration is an infrastructure migration, it's an operating system upgrade. Well, that's not entirely true. If you look at the upgrade path, there is no upgrade path from Windows Server 2003 to Windows Server 2012 directly. You can take an indirect path via Windows Server 2008, at least via 32-bit versions. However, that's a risky process. It's a one-step process, and certainly not something that you'd be looking to do with a lot of the legacy infrastructure in your environment. Realistically, we're looking at an application migration project, looking at taking the applications or workloads that are running on Windows Server 2003 and repurposing those for a different hosting environment. So there's two key aspects to that, and if you look at the slide in front of you, obviously I'm from HP, so I'll talk about HP products, but we're looking at HP Universal Discovery here as a tool that HP uses as part of its data center migration project. And what this tool is able to do, it will sit on a network and it will do a level of technical discovery. So you'll be able to understand the infrastructure that you're running and the operating systems that you're running, the applications that are installed, the software products that are installed on that infrastructure, and also where this product differentiates itself is its ability to map the network communications between servers so that you can understand, really map out those business services that are running on your infrastructure. So for example, if I'm running, say, an intelligent printing solution and I want to be able to migrate that off of Windows Server 2003 onto 2008 or onto 2012, what I will be able to pick up with this kind of discovery tool, I will be able to understand where the backend databases sit, where the local print spoolers sit, where some of the interfaces sit with Active Directory and that kind of thing. That builds me up a map of not only what components do I need to migrate, but also what other things do I need to reconfigure. So if I'm moving software products between different infrastructure, between different operating systems, there'll be things in and around the periphery, either users or scheduled jobs or database connections, and all those things will need to be reconfigured as a software product is migrated. And that's where the technical discovery is really helpful. However, all that will really tell you is that you have a server running a piece of software and what the network communications will be. What it won't tell you, for example, is what application, what business service that software is supporting. So for example, you may find out that W2K3-DB01 is running Windows Server 2003, is running SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 4. What it won't tell you is that that's part of the financial system Mercury. It won't tell you why that server is or isn't clustered. It won't talk about any upgrades that are being planned in the future for that application. It won't talk about any of the downtime, the availability requirements of that application, or for example, end of month billing may be a critical time for that system that you may not get out of technical discovery. So always be really clear that when you're trying to understand what applications and what software are running on your Windows Server 2003 operating systems, that don't just take the technical data, understand the context in which that application is running, and that will therefore enable you to put a proper plan in place to do a level of migration. And so when you've had a look at those applications, the key then is to work out what are you going to do with them. So it's not uncommon that we see customers who've executed projects, and as far as the project team is concerned, a new system has been deployed, users have been migrated, data has been migrated, and therefore the project's completed. It's not uncommon to find that the operations team aren't informed, and the decommission process is often forgotten about in projects because resources are taken down to the very last piece of funding they've got. We've hit the final timescales and those resources are reallocated as people have moved on to different projects. So it's not uncommon that we see old applications that are still running on a network that the support teams think are still running, but they're not really sure, A level of discovery will actually identify that applications are being either superseded or decommissioned or are no longer required. So if you think today perhaps you have a situation where you have 200 servers that need to be dealt with, perhaps you've only got 170, perhaps you've only got 150. The level of discovery will put the context into your migration project and help you understand clearly what you need to plan to deal with. Stepping down this list, if you can see that if you look at the revise and the refactor, if you've got a software product that might need a little bit of tweaking, perhaps some reconfiguration, perhaps shimming the application so that you trick it into thinking that it's running on a supported system, these are different combinations of remediation that are sort of small to medium complexity. They're things that can be relatively easy managed and planned against. The biggest challenge in all of this is going to be the rebuild. So where you have an application that's been customized within an inch of its life, or is no longer supported by the vendor and no longer has an upgrade path to a modern supported operating system, the rebuild is going to be the biggest challenge in terms of getting the application, or at least the business functionality that application is providing, hosted on a modern supported operating system. The final option in this slide is talking about rehost. So there are some technologies that are available. Certainly HP has partnered with 2 vendors, so HP is currently partnering with AppZero, and what that product will do, it will virtualize an application. It's by the development team from AppV, if anybody can remember that, back in the day. And what this will do is it will virtualize an application on Windows Server 2012. So install AppZero onto your target environment where you're looking to migrate the application to. It will then copy the application from Windows Server 2003 into what's called a virtual application appliance, if you imagine it as a bubble, and the application will run in a bubble on Windows Server 2012, abstracting itself from the operating system. The key benefit here is that you don't need to reinstall the software. This is a real benefit where software has existed in an environment for a long period of time, developers have left, key knowledgeable people have left, things haven't been written down, and there's a lack of knowledge in terms of how to migrate the application. It's also a great tool for bespoke bits of software, so where you have an application that is no longer supported in any future versions, a particular release was written just for you, and there's nothing to replace it, then this is a great example of being able to lift and shift that software onto a supported operating system. Now then, it's really important to understand, you will have remediated legacy infrastructure, you will have remediated the legacy operating system, but you've still got key critical piece of software running in your environment that you don't understand and is aging and is going to get harder and harder to deal with. So it's great for a short-term tactical response, but really, don't think about it in terms of this is the right answer for my holistic IT environment going forward. It helps you get over a specific set of short-term challenges. And so I think Mark's going to talk about some of the target destinations that you could consider.
So thanks for that, Rob. I guess the good news is there's lots of options for you to explore. This slide is just an overview only. We're going to dig into each one in a bit more detail. But in terms of your options, there's the obvious one, which is Windows Server 2012, be that physically provisioned or virtually provisioned, and it's Microsoft's latest operating system. There's Phoenix's CloudShow UK, which is our community cloud offering. And then there's the big 2 public offerings from Microsoft. Office 365 is their software as a service offering. And then you've got Microsoft Azure, which can cater for infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or even software as a service now on their public cloud. So on Office 365 and Azure, it's worth pointing out that Phoenix, as part of our Cloud Solutions Provider program with Microsoft, can sell these products through. So what that means, if you're a Phoenix customer, we own the relationship with you, but we can consume Office 365 licenses or Azure from August this year. We can consume those offerings, and you get the single bill from a Phoenix perspective. What that also means is, because we're owning the customer's life cycle, we can do the billing and support as well. So in terms of support, if you get a problem with Office 365 or Azure, you're able to ring Phoenix up, and we act as your support desk rather than going to Microsoft themselves. If any of you have tried to go to Microsoft for Office 365 or Azure support, you'll be well aware of that. Sometimes it's a month before you get any response back from Microsoft. So we saw that as an opportunity to give customers a more complete and enriched offering, and we do the technical support alongside your existing infrastructure, be that on-premise or in one of our UK data centers. So there's Windows Server 2012, which is at the heart of Microsoft's cloud platform vision. Server 2012 R2 brings Microsoft experience at delivering global scale cloud services into your infrastructure with new features in virtualization, management, storage, networking, virtual desktops, access and information protection. It really is the operating system of choice, and in terms of migration from 2003, Server 2012 is what you'd expect to be going across to. Again, be that a physical implementation or in a virtualized environment. Office 365 from Microsoft, again as part of Phoenix's Cloud Solutions Provider program, is your complete Office in the cloud effectively. It gives you the familiarity and power of Office with the flexibility and scalability that you get from the cloud, which really gives you the freedom to work wherever, whenever, all with the security and trust and privacy that you trust from Microsoft. So whether this is accessing a fat Office client on your desktop or using Office online, your Exchange mailbox data is held in Exchange Online. You get mobility options, team sites through SharePoint, basically, the corporate social network from Yammer. Basically, everything that you need to use as an Office offering is available through Office 365. In addition to that, what Phoenix has also been doing with Office 365 is we've launched our Business Essentials line, which is a bit of CloudShare UK, which I'll come on to in a second. But basically, it's what you get with Office 365 is OneDrive for Business, which is an online data storage platform. But some of our existing customers have commented that they'd like the local file security that we provide in our data centers on our community cloud. So what we've done is we've bundled some CloudShare resource alongside Office 365, and we're selling it as our Business Essential SKUs. Again, contact us for more information. Be happy to go through that with you.
I think I'd just like to add on to the end of that, Mark, that when I was talking earlier that Windows 2003 is an application migration, it's a workload migration, one of the messages that we try and get across is that there's lots of different technologies that are available in 2015, and that's part of why we're talking today about the different cloud offerings as well. That it's probably appropriate for some of the solutions to continue to run on Windows Server 2012 operating system instances within your data center or within the Phoenix data center. But your first perspective, your first thought process shouldn't be just to duplicate what you have today. And Office 365 is a great example where HP is seeing a lot of customers moving their Exchange and specifically Link 365 and taking advantage of the Azure platform that way. So instead of moving from local messaging servers running 2003 and doing an upgrade and moving to local messaging servers running 2012, they're moving those services up to the cloud and taking advantage of these newer technologies. So it's just a really good example that's being used by other customers, that not doing the like-for-like migration is one of the key things to think about in terms of what's the right platform to host these services on going forward.
Yeah, it's a really good point, is that, Rob? Thanks. So in terms of CloudShare UK, this is Phoenix's cloud offering. And basically what this does is it gives you platform as a service offerings. So again, it's built on HP's cloud system technology, and it's our next generation enterprise class infrastructure really that combines the economies of scale of a public cloud with the flexibility, security and resiliency of a private cloud. So you as a customer avoid the capital expense of building and maintaining your own in-house infrastructures, and instead you pay a monthly OPEX-based fee for the resources that you use. So you're eliminating power, cooling, rack costs, and hosting an in-house infrastructure on your own premises. And what that enables your IT staff is to they can concentrate on adding business value to the organisation rather than worrying about the underlying feeding and watering of the operating system or the infrastructure. That's what Phoenix does, and that's what we give to you. So basically, the way that we've done this is we have off-the-shelf packages that you're able to select from. So that's Active Directory, mail services, line of business, SQL services, web hosting, etc. And you pick the package that suits the number of users or the workload that you want to run on there. And we do all the provisioning for you. We fully manage the implementation and ongoing management of it. And you're just responsible for the application that sits on top. It also allows us the ability to burst into public cloud offerings if we want. So if we wanted to burst into Microsoft Azure, we can do. If we want to burst into HP's Helion Cloud, we can do. So it's quite a flexible platform aimed at businesses that don't want the underlying management and responsibility of the infrastructure. So in terms of Azure, Azure is new to Phoenix on our Cloud Solutions Provider program. Like I said earlier in the webinar, it's not actually available until August, but we're now starting to talk to customers about this and what that means for them. Azure is Microsoft's public cloud infrastructure based on infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. You know, it's up there in the Gartner top 3 for public cloud offerings. It's one of the fastest growing cloud providers on the planet. It's hybrid ready, so it allows you to take the best of both worlds, be that a bit of CloudShare or a bit of your own private cloud infrastructure and a bit of Azure. You can do that. It's open and flexible, so it supports all the open frameworks. You get 99.95% availability. It's a global implementation, so it's everywhere. There's data centers in 19 different regions, I think, and it's very economical and scalable. So the best of both worlds for Phoenix and our customers is that you have your private intelligence in our own cloud offering, in our own data centers, and then you can burst out to public cloud when you need resource on demand or you need some extra compute resource to do to number crunch a complex task, for example.
So thanks for that, Mark. And I think that one of the things that you need to take a look at when selecting any of those technologies that we've just talked about is part of the best practice that we're talking about today is the first thing we wanted to make sure that you guys understood is that from our perspective and all the conversations that we're having with our customers is that this isn't an infrastructure upgrade, it's an application migration. And if you're going to take that approach to it, then you need to do a level of planning. And so what are some of the best practices in and around doing that? So typically you're going to be looking at new hardware. So from that perspective, new hardware in the sense of you're copying your workloads. You're going to be hosting your old and hosting your new at the same time. So there's a thought process around what's that going to be and how is that going to be configured, and maybe that might be delivered in a different way. And that whilst it says new hardware in the first bullet point there, what it's really talking about is new technology platforms. So potentially new hardware, but also, you know, some of the cloud offerings that Mark's been talking about. The second bullet point there is in around virtualization and consolidation. So for some of the applications where there may be legacy applications, you need to keep them for compliance perspectives, where you've deployed a new line of business application, you've kept the old application in read-only mode, therefore you've got a very clear idea of the performance requirements of it. If it's running on older hardware, so from a HP perspective, Gen 4, Gen 5 hardware, then you'll be able to move that onto a much smaller virtual platform on brand new hardware. At that point, you're looking at a level of consolidation, increased virtualization, and better utilization of your data center. We've talked around some of the security and compliance issues. What this is talking about, and what this whole slide's talking about, is understanding a plan. So what you should be having a think about is there's obviously a deadline for when support expires, and dependent on the number of instances within your environment, you won't get everything done by the deadline. So what's the most critical things to do? What's the most important things to do? And some of the things driving that will be security and compliance. If you've got external regulations that you need to comply to within your industry, that perhaps taking those specific systems that will be under those regulatory compliance issues are the ones to focus on first. Put those at the right point in your plan to make sure you mitigate your risk at the right time. Perhaps conversely, other customers are saying, okay, we'll do a quick pilot to prove our methodologies, but let's get our most critical business systems migrated first. Some of those applications that if they went down or if they were compromised would cause us the most amount of financial pain if they're unavailable, or even the most amount of reputational risk, embarrassment if those systems weren't able to be online. So that enables you to take a think about what order should you be dealing with these applications as you do this migration, as you migrate away from this legacy operating system. There are other issues in and around there, around the management, and obviously as you're moving away from 2003, there's opportunities for more modern management tools. The people's, the skills and the governance is quite critical. So from a people's perspective, okay, so you're going to have a team. Have a think about, if I've got a team that needs to migrate an application away from Windows Server 2003, if I'm doing a database migration, then I'm going to need DBAs, obviously. Are they going to sit in the existing infrastructure team? And the reason we talk about applications so much is that the team, the department that's receiving the bill from Microsoft for support, the team that's tasked with maintaining the operating system, isn't necessarily the team where these resources live. So if I need somebody to tweak an application, maybe go from version 8 to version 9 of a particular application, those application specialists, they won't sit in the infrastructure team. DBAs typically don't sit in the infrastructure team. So have you got the right matrix of different teams and understand you've got the right stakeholders supporting your project? Do you have the right skills? Is your team currently skilled up in supporting Windows 2003 or Windows 2008? Maybe. Do they have the right skills to support 2008 and 2012? Do they have the right skills and understand how to manage things in a cloud environment or a hybrid delivery where some is in cloud, some is local, and the resources are shared? Finally, the governance is really important as well. If I start a project and think that I've got 9 months to migrate 600 servers away from Windows Server 2003, and I know where each of the different servers is going to be targeted, I've got a known plan and I can plan for that because it's a fixed thing. However, if there's no governance in place, how do I know that there aren't developers or different business units rolling out legacy applications, introducing new 2003 into the estate because that's what they think they need? That's why that's really critical. The other key part of governance is understanding change control. So if you're an organization that is implementing ITIL and you may have strict change control, these kind of projects, they may need to, well, they will likely be introducing a new set of changes at a significant rate into the organization. And are you prepared for that? Are you ready for that? So what many customers are doing today is warming up their change teams. Expect these changes. Let's agree some standard repeatable changes. Let's relax some of our change policies in certain areas where it's appropriate. And so these are all the things that you should be thinking about in terms of how am I best going to get from the place I am today to the place I want to be tomorrow. And so in summary, I think the point that I've tried to make throughout this, and I'm sure Mark would echo, is that this isn't really an operating system upgrade. This is about finding new ways to host your business applications. Don't just copy what you've got today. There's new technologies out there and there's new ways of doing things. By doing that, you need to evaluate what the workloads are that are currently running on Windows Server 2003. Have a think what they are, try and understand what they're doing, and maybe work out what the right hosting platform for those business applications is tomorrow. A key example, we talked about Link 365 and Exchange 365 earlier. Amazes me, but I see lots of customers running file and print on Windows Server 2003. That's probably not the most efficient use of your Windows Server licenses, your antivirus licenses, or the expensive HP blades that you've got in your data center. Network attached storage might be a better solution for that, but have a clear strategy. Don't just replicate what you've got today. Find better ways of hosting it, more efficient ways of hosting it. Mark's talked about the Phoenix Cloud platform, and again, that's a great way of hosting services in a different methodology. I talked on the previous slide about governance, so making sure that people are supporting your project where you needing to get support to migrate users, migrate applications, and maybe have extended outages as part of that migration. Having the right support within the business is key, and if you don't make it a priority, it won't happen.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. And I guess the message that we want to leave you with is that we can help you. So through our migration services, and we can come into your business and scope out the requirements. We can look at your existing applications that are running on Windows 2003 and come up with some recommendations and proposals based around where we think those workloads should be in the future, whether they're migrated as is, or we do some kind of consolidation work, or we look to migrate you to a new application. We can talk you through all that and come up with a roadmap with you so that you're comfortable with what the future looks like for your business in tackling this problem. Once that we've agreed all this, then we do a detailed design document. So we have a workshop where we go through with all your techies and as Rob said, business leaders, we need their buy-in on this as well. And, we, as a combined collective, we come up with a development and cut-over plan for this work effort to happen over. And then for us as Phoenix, it's about doing the implementation professionally with you, and that's why we work with HP as our partner for this in terms of migrating your applications and workloads. But we also want to be ensuring that we're doing a knowledge transfer with your staff, so they're getting to understand what the cloud offerings are, whether that's public cloud, CloudShare UK, or Business Essential SKU, Office 365, or just plain Server 2012. We want to make sure we do that knowledge transfer with you, do some pilot testing, make sure that you as a customer are happy with what we're doing and what you're getting. Then we actually do the migration itself, so we agree the cut-over time, and whether that's you doing that as the customer or Phoenix doing that on your behalf in conjunction with HP, we'll guide you through all that process and make sure that disruption is to an absolute minimum while we do that. And then once you're satisfied that your platform is being cut across onto the new offering, we'll help you with removal of the legacy servers and cleaning up the environment, reclaiming all licenses, shutting everything down and disposing of it. So basically, we've done this, it's tried and tested for us, we've done it quite a few times, and we'd really like the opportunity to come in and talk to you individually about that and the best way forward for you and your business.
So with that, Rob, I think we'll have a look and see if there's any questions for us to answer. I see there's a couple in there.
Yeah, so the first one that I can see is how long does it take? Well, that's a really open-ended question, so it's a really hard one to answer. I guess the answer first is, well, it depends on how many operating systems that you've currently got. Doesn't really matter if it's physical or virtual. The challenge is understanding what's on each of those operating systems, what are the applications. If I've got 500 servers running file and print, that's relatively easy to migrate. If I've got 20 servers running Exchange, then it's a mailbox migration. A little bit more difficult, but not massively complex. If I've got lots of different bespoke applications, then that can be a much harder piece of work. So part of it is understanding what are you running, and that has a massive impact on the duration, but also the remediation. So the slide that I showed earlier in terms of what do you do with that. If there are applications there that need minor tweaks, then that's a small rate of change, and really it really comes down to the level of testing that you think that you need to do. So there's a level of effort involved in obviously doing the remediation work, but there's also a level of testing that's going to be aligned to two things. It's going to be aligned to the amount of change that you've done, obviously, but also your business's appetite for risk. So if you don't like doing change and it's really hard to get change past your approvers, then your project's going to take much longer. And that's part of why we said it earlier on in the webinar, that if you can warm people up to the fact that there's big business risk in not making these changes, therefore please expect them, and can we negotiate some increased rate of change in the business, that'll have a massive impact. So really, it's so dependent on what you're running, it's hard to give a straight answer to that, so apologies if that was a bit of a woolly response. But the key drivers and the key levers in terms of how long does it take are, depends what you're running, depends what you want to migrate to, and also the level of change that you're prepared to accelerate through the business, and that's really related to the level of testing you've got to do.
No, I think that was a good response, that, Rob, and I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to stress also in the webinar in terms of you're not alone with this. Phoenix and HP are willing to come in and work through this with you and make sure that you identify all the steps in the right order, and we can come up with the timeline together for migration so that you're best informed to take that back inside your business. So I think you did a good job of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's one more question. I'll have a go at this one. So, how much does it cost to extend support? Well, yeah, it's a relatively easy one to answer, really. I guess the answer is you can't. Microsoft's ending all support for Server 2003 in July. That includes critical and security updates, everything that we talked to you about in the webinar, basically. We did ask for one particular customer what the monetary value of extending support would be, and just for one server on its own, it was over 100,000 US dollars to do that. So cost-wise, not really justifiable for anybody to continue with Server 2003, and a good ROI model to take back into the business in terms of migrating your workload.
And I think just to put that in an additional piece of context, all of those updates are not going to be made available to the general public in July of this year. Some customers with deep pockets will be able to get the custom support agreements that we spoke about earlier, but be aware that those costs will increase year on year. The logic behind this is that Microsoft have a team of developers that they are dedicating to providing these security updates for Windows 2003. Those developers are in part funded by the custom support agreement, so you need to show that you've got a migration plan. Just to be able to get it, you can't get onto that program by default. Microsoft's expectation is that people will complete their projects during the life of the program, and therefore after the first, second and third years, and it only runs for 3 years, the price goes up exponentially. So I think in that context there's definitely a message there of you can't do nothing, something has to happen.
I think also I just want to add something else that I've just thought of, that if you're an existing Phoenix customer and you've got quite a large legacy Server 2003 estate, if you contact your service delivery manager or account manager, we're currently putting a plan together of how we tackle that for our existing customers. So there will be options already available to you, and following this webinar someone will be in touch. Okay, I think that's about it. There's no more questions. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending. As we said at the beginning, the slides and the webinar recording itself will be emailed to you within 48 hours. And someone from Phoenix will be in touch, give you a courtesy call just to make sure that everything was okay for you on the webinar, and if there's any follow-up actions or you'd like us to come in conjunction with HP and talk to you about your estate and what options you've got. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, then please, if you're an existing Phoenix customer, contact your account manager or service delivery manager, or you can call the number on the screen or send us an email and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. So with that, I'd like to thank Rob for giving up his time and explaining all the migration strategy and different ways that we can do that, and thank you all for attending, and obviously understand that you have busy days, and really appreciate you taking the time out to listen to me and Rob this morning.
Thanks very much, Mark, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you guys. Goodbye all.